Dear students, good evening. Welcome to Excellence IAS. Let us do the editorial analysis for today, that is 21st December 2022. The first article, Delhi LG orders recovery of 97 crore from AAP for political advertisements. Let us understand this. Let's take party and government. Are they one and the same? No. In this case, party can give an advertisement, but it has to be from its own exchequer. If government advertisement, a scheme or program need to be advertised, this has to come from government exchequer, which is public money. Sometimes what the political parties do, they try to promote the party interests through the government money. This is a regular practice. If you see, if TRS, if it is advertising about something like Raitu Bandhu, what it will do, it will not advertise in its own name, it will advertise in the name of the government with chief ministers and various ministers' photos into that. Here, it will be given in the pink color so that people can connect with the TRS party. So, essentially, parties in power disguising their advertisement and billing that cost to the government. On this, a committee was appointed on the recommendations of the Supreme Court, that is called Committee on Content Regulation in Government Advertising, CCRGA, Committee on Content Regulation in Government Advertising. It was formed in 2016 by Information and Broadcasting Ministry. So it has given certain guidelines. What the LG says is, the present advertising of the app is violative of those guidelines and the money has to be recovered from the AAP party to the government exchequer. This is expected to be independent, impartial, neutral institution. But the provisions related to Election Commission were not impartial. And many of the political parties allege that Election Commission is more functioning in favor of the party in power. In this case, fourth branch institutions are integrity institutions. Across the world, many of the progressive constitutions created these integrity institutions, and their function is to ensure or counter the abuse of the power by the executive. So these are also called accountability institutions. In this case, Kenya, South Africa stand as example. Many of the institutions that have statutory status in India, these have a constitutional status in South Africa. For example, Information Commission. And they also provide for independence with regard to the appointment, with regard to their service conditions in office. In the case of the Election Commission, when we talk about the appointment, who appoints them? That is by the President of India on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Who are these Council of Ministers? Nothing but party in power. These are party in power. Obviously, there is a chance that Election Commission of India may work in support of the people who have appointed, who are been appointed. So in this scenario, what we have to see, the appointment has to be independent from the government of the day. And the second, does it have to come through the judiciary or through the parliament? Judiciary can state the principles. Ultimately, a law related to the Election Commission and its independent functioning has to be made by the parliament. So clear principles have to be laid by the Supreme Court to ensure the autonomy of the Election Commission, and parliament has to enact a law as per the principles of the Supreme Court. The new normal in the Indo-Pacific contestation. Previously, we used to call South Asia. Now, South Asia is being submerged in the bigger identity of Indo-Pacific. In this case, China is making its inroads into the Indian Ocean. It is clearly visible when it has claimed itself certain islands in the South China Sea. Added to that, the Gwadar port it is constructing. And third thing is string of pearls, where it is trying to have naval bases across various countries in South Asia. And recently you also saw debt diplomacy. So what is this debt diplomacy? They are giving liberal aid to various countries in South Asia. Counter to this, India is also growing alliances with various countries, especially Quad. Obviously, when two boulders are fighting each other, the smaller countries, they struggle or they try to take the advantage of both the countries. So that's where a competitive diplomacy is coming between India and China. In this case, India provided for $4 billion aid to Nepal and also food and fuel support to Sri Lanka when it is going through crisis, economic crisis. And third thing is, Maldives, India's first policy is actively supported by the government of India. So these are the things which are happening now. So Japan is also actively supporting India. It has restructured the debt which was given to Sri Lanka, debt restructuring. And also Colombo Security Conclave was done by India. In this case, China, what it is doing, recently a ship, Yuan Wang 5, it has entered into the Indian Ocean waters. It can even track the satellites and collect the data from the satellites. India raised objections, but Sri Lanka gave certain lame reasons, allowed that to dock at the Hambantota port. And second, China also has conducted a forum, created a forum, China Indian Ocean Region Forum. That is, many countries have attended for that. The propound ramifications of one amendment. So here, this article is related to Digital Personal Data Protection Bill. In this, there is one provision. What is that? Public officials' data need not be disclosed. It will be protected under the data protection law. Let us take income tax returns of an officer are there, an IAS officer are there. Today, in the public interest, I can collect that IT returns from under the RTI Act. But today, this is made non-functional by what? By this Digital Personal Data Protection Bill. And second is an authority which is being created. This authority is called Data Protection Authority of India. The appointment of the members to this Data Protection Authority, their service conditions, tenure, everything are determined by the government. Where the citizens have to protect themselves from, most of the times it is from the government. Because government holds a lot of information related to the citizens. So, the citizen has to have first protection from the government through the data protection law, so that government agencies do not misuse his personal information. But when government has so much of discretion, obviously it is not in the interests of good law, not in the interests of the protection of the privacy of the people. So in this scenario, let us see regulatory agencies. The Data Protection Authority is a regulatory agency. Obviously, it has to be independent. But government controlling these regulatory agencies is not in the sound principles of administration. The regulatory agencies and government shall be at arm's length distance from each other. So that is the point which you need to understand. Fluid boundaries. This is about interstate boundary disputes. Remember, diversity is the critical strength of India. People from one region shall experience the other region. But what is the problem? In a particular place, the democracy can lead to the failure to protect minorities. So let's take, in Tamil Nadu, Telugus and Kannadigas can be a minority. So obviously certain protections are being given by the constitution to protect these linguistic minorities. When the linguistic states were created, there was no promise that all those people who are speaking the language will live in that particular state. These are not perfect boundaries. Every state has certain kinds of linguistic minorities. They also have constitutional protections. So in the case of Karnataka and Maharashtra, the Maharashtra says Marathi speaking population of Karnataka and the districts adjoining them has to be placed in Maharashtra state. And Karnataka claims Sholapur, Kolhapur and Sangli districts of Maharashtra. And this is getting politicized. The worst part is lack of appreciation of diversity And then, political culture to respect the diversity is the major problem in India. When there is no political culture is created to respect the diversity, the judicial action cannot do much as expected. So what is necessary is a political culture to respect and protect diversity. A new global biodiversity framework. So GBF, Global Biodiversity Framework. So here, prelims question always on biodiversity, they ask on one word, prohibition versus sustainable use. In the case of wetlands everywhere, this is where students confuse. Nowhere these frameworks prohibit the use of the resources. They only recommend for sustainable use of the resources. Identify the difference over here. No prohibition. It is only the sustainable use of resources. That is one thing. Second thing is, indigenous population who are living over there, their rights have to be protected. So it do not talk about taking away these people from those places to protect the biodiversity. The indigenous people and their livelihood and life has to be respected, protected. And third thing, here in the CBD in Montreal, which has happened recently, few things are being spoken about. One is $200 billion, 30 by 30. What is 30 by 30? 30% of land and sea has to be protected by 2030. And second, by 2025, developed countries will contribute $20 billion for protection of biodiversity per year. By 2030, it will become $30 billion. These are the things which are being spoken about in Montreal Protocol. So Montreal Protocol is different. This is the Montreal Summit with regard to the Convention on Biodiversity. These are the articles for today. Thank you very much.